All right, best albums. We're gonna count down 10 to 1. I cheated on these lists, Dave. I'm gonna tell you how. I made my list of 11, giving sharing the 10 spot on both lists because I couldn't whittle it down that much. So
Wow.
I'll go first. I'll go first on albums. You can go first on songs. Number 10, Anderson .Paak, Oxford, tied with Tierra
Oxford?
Whack,
I didn't hear that one.
Oxnard, Oxnard, and tied with Tierra Whack, Whack World. Now it's
Nice.
yeah. I'm wondering where I know you probably had Anderson .Paak on your list. Did you have Tierra Whack?
Yeah, so I have Anderson Paak number one. Spoilers already, I guess. Um, and then Tier Whack, I also have 10.
All right, so why don't we talk about Pac first? Why was it your number one?
Yeah, it's funny because I also more spoilers. I did not pick an Anderson song for the songs list. And I was trying to, I was thinking, I was like, do I have an Anderson song that I really would go to? And I really couldn't narrow it down. I couldn't whittle it down. And I think that kind of speaks to the strengths of the album for me anyway, is that I just thought front to back, the vibe was so strong and the highs were so consistently high that, I didn't want to I'd rather honor the whole thing than just, try and pick a highlight, which again,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of options. But I no, we talked about the album recently, so we don't want to belabor that too much. Check the review out. But I think Oxnard is perhaps not as strong as his last record, Malibu, but I think he's perhaps his most confident self on this album. And
Mm-hmm.
he's just a talented singer, talented songwriter, talented drummer. Great ear for production. Obviously, Dr. Dre's all over this thing. Great features from big name people like Kendrick and Q-Tip, and I just think it's a fucking fantastic West Coast album. It's great. So yeah, it's my favorite. It was tough to narrow it down with the other my number two to go but decide for one, but I went with it and I'm happy with it. Really like the album.
It's a solid choice to number one. I think that just speaks to the strength of music this year. That it came in at number 10 for me, and I could have had it almost anywhere else on this list. The thing that stands out most to me about Oxnard, and again, we belabored this in our review, so definitely check that out. But I think just the way that Anderson, infuses his personality into this with his humor, his own stylings, like sonically and with his jazz drumming, but also he gets like some of the best features in this of the year. Tupac, not Tupac. That would be amazing. If he got Tupac. Snoop Dogg. He got Q-Tip.
Cole.
A great J. Cole feature. Like you gotta like give it to him for that. So Oxnard, definitely check it out. Now Tierra Whack is a little bit more interesting. She's a up and coming rapper out of Philadelphia, and this is a 15-minute album with 15 songs. We reviewed this earlier in the year. The reason that it makes it onto my list is because I think Tierra Whack is the most exciting, like new artist, if you want to call her new. This is her first like real project, and the fact that she was able to make 15 songs that were 1 minute and make it a gripping listen is something that I think I've thought about almost as much as any other album this year, just in terms of how experimental this was and what a great and interesting idea, and to pull it off. And the fact that I come back to some of her songs on this too for only being a minute, and I still like Pet Cemetery comes
Mhm.
to head as one that I come back to a lot.
Mumbo Jumbo.
Yes, Mumbo Jumbo is a great one off it. So Tierra Whack, one of the most exciting artists of the year. Definitely can't wait to see what she does more of.
Yeah, I couldn't leave off this album just because, despite the very short runtime, it presents so many more ideas than albums three times as long, and that's what's so exciting. Because again, as you mentioned, perhaps what's most exciting is future potential. The music will get next, but I think even just Whack World itself is, like you said, it's a very unique project. It doesn't really sound like anyone else, but also is quite impressive just in terms of sheer artistry. So yeah, I think it's the format itself is worth honoring, but also it's good content. So yeah, big fan to Earwax. Looking forward to seeing what she does next for sure.
Mhm. What was your number 10?
Earwax 10.
Tierra Whack. Okay, number 9 for you.
My number 9 was Denzel Curry, Taboo, which we also reviewed recently or a few months ago.
Mhm.
And I've been a Denzel Curry fan a long time, but this was his first like quote good project. And I think the project's actually very great, and he brings just intense lyricism, manic energy on the mic, and also doesn't really sound like anyone else. I think his voice is really unique, but he also is kind of a purist in terms of his rapping ability. But then you have this album, and like yeah, there was like the themes of like the dark and the light on it. But if you just think about the lyrics, what he actually gets down to, whether he's talking like about social issues and like death and darkness and depression and stuff, there's a lot going on. So I think Taboo, another album where I didn't pick a song for my songs list from this because I just think it works better as a work of art. But I think obviously the first single, Cloud Cobain, is probably the most successful song, but also is a little bit different than we've gone from Denzel before. More of a singy like pop rap song that also
Mhm.
isn't skimping on the content. So yeah, Denzel Curry, Taboo, his debut album. Big fan. I love to tell people about him, and I think this has put a lot of people on because this album got a lot of love.
Yeah, this was I think a huge step up for Denzel Curry. He seems to be emerging as a budding star. It didn't make my list, but it's a very worthy choice. When it came out for a couple weeks, people just kept going back to it and back to it and lauding it. So, uh, if you missed that one, definitely circle back to it. My number 9, Blood Orange, Negro Swan. And this is one where I didn't pick a song off this to be on my best songs list, only because I think this album's strength is it being an album. When you listen to this from front to back, it's very immersive and it really pulls you from song to song with the way that it's produced so beautifully. And Blood Orange, as a musician and as an artist, I think really packs a lot of different ideas. And some of the lyrics on this I think could have been improved, but then he has other songs like Orlando or Charcoal Baby, which are I think incredibly exciting and intimate, and that play with these ideas that really pull you in. It, Negro Swan, I think, is an album that you're not going to see on a lot of people's top 10s, but it's going to be in people's like
Sure.
15s, 20s,
Yeah.
30s. But I really think that for what he did in making this a cohesive experience, it's a wonderful project. So, did this make your list? I'm going to guess no.
No, it didn't. I like a list in my honorable mentions where it's like albums that like I respected and like recognize as good, but they're not like my
Mm-hmm.
favorite type of music per se. So thus they're not on my own list. And but this would be one of those albums. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was good, very good,
All right. Number 8, I had MGMT, Little Dark Age.
nice.
Um, Probably my biggest surprise of the year. MGMT kind of fell off there for a while, and when I heard they were dropping another album, I was like, gonna give this crap a listen, and put it on the car. And I can actually remember driving to this and being like, oh shit, MGMT is fucking back, and it's really exciting. Um, you know, I when I looked at my Spotify year end list, I had 3 or 4 songs from this album that I had listened to the most this year, and I think that just speaks to not only how they were able to recapture the poppiness of their sound, but they did it in a way that didn't feel cheap. Like they were just trying to make pop sounds. They stayed true to, I think, their inventiveness and what made them originally really exciting. But like Little Dark Age, She Works Out Too Much, When You Die, Me and Michael, James, like all of these songs are really great. Alternative rock songs, for whatever that means at this point. And MGMT, I think, again, my surprise of the year for how they were able to come back and establish themselves. And I'm actually excited for an MGMT album in the future.
Yeah, it
Couldn't
was
have said that a year ago.
yeah, well, exactly. I think that's the main takeaway. Is just it was a very refreshing and unexpected return to form because it's been a while, when fucking Kids dropped and the Record Spectacular came out. They've gone quite the journey, and they're kind of enigmatic guys as it is. So it was nice to see this. And yeah, definitely one of those like first surprises because that dropped towards the beginning of the year. So it's a good pick.
What was your number 8?
Yeah, my number 8. I don't have a whole lot to say, but my number 8's J Rock's Redemption. I just think it's a really good like gangster rap album. It's a really good street rap, and like it's just one of those like solid records that most of the songs I think are really good. Again, good features. J Rock obviously
Mm-hmm.
has the TD connection, so he can bring in those people. He can bring in fucking SZA, you can bring in Kendrick, but also like there's just those street singles, and then I mean, it started off with King's Dead, which was obviously kind of viral for Future's reasons, but I think Rock really kind of came into his own on this because he's been someone who's been bubbling and grinding for so long. So the
Mhm.
fact that he finally can make an album that really, just kind of captures the essence of who J Rock is. He'll never be the best rapper, the biggest rapper, but I feel like this is finally it's like quote, this is the J Rock record that anyone want to put on. And it's kind of similar to Victory Lap by Nipsey Hussle, an album that actually just got a Grammy nomination. And I kind of view them in the same way, but I like this one a little bit more. So that's, yeah, J Rock. Was very happy that this did as well critically as it did. Obviously, it still didn't do that well commercially for him, which has been a trend for him. But I think Rock is not too worried about that these days. He's doing good.
Solid pick. A lot of hip hop on your list so far. Does that continue at number 7?
Yeah, there's a lot of hip hop on here, and it's funny because I have a lot of alternative people, and you're gonna get to some of them, but it's like I never like revisited the albums that much, so I didn't want to put them on a personal list. But I mean, there's
Mm.
tons of albums that like if you were making like an objective list, yeah, it's gonna be a lot more multifaceted. For me, it's like
Yeah.
80%. Wow.
Who
But
do you got number 7?
number 7 for me is Kids See Ghosts. Kanye
Ah, it
West,
came in
Kid
at number
Cudi.
6 for me.
Yeah. So, why did you have them at 6? I have them at 7. And I know initially when we heard that record, we're like, "Ooh, this is contender. This should be right at the top." But it
Yeah.
dropped a little bit for me. Probably dropped a little bit for you. Why was that?
Yeah, I think first, I think that this was a great album that really pulled the best out of both of these artists. Kanye and Cudi have had, I mean, they've been making songs since what, like graduation, like
808s. Uh,
808. So,
yeah.
I mean, they've been making music for a while, but they had their fallings out, and it was publicly documented, just like everything in Kanye's life seems to be at this point. And I think people were excited but cautious about this album. And then you hear Cudi on Ye, on Free, and you're just like, whoa, like they got something here. Then it comes out, was that next week or 2 weeks later, Kids See Ghosts, and it's fucking fire. And I think that there's a song track to track. It's very strong, but I think where it kind of fell off for me was I didn't find myself finding many of the songs super memorable. And I think even though it's a really solid project, and every time I listen to it, I'm like, oh, this is really good. It never really like stuck for me like some of these other albums did. So for that reason, I think it fell a bit, but it's still ace. Why did it fall for you?
I think I agree. The memorable aspects of it a little questionable. And I think the problem is when most people heard this album, it was uh, tough to judge, strictly musically. A lot of people are bringing in outside forces, obviously, when it comes to
Mhm.
Kanye these days, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And especially coming off Ye, which most people found pretty disappointing. I still like Ye quite a bit. Didn't make my list, but Kids See Ghosts was definitely a step up because it definitely felt like Kanye was just like more lucid on this. Again, given the recent work we were uh, comparing it against, but also Cudi, who had been through a critically wrought time recently as a solo artist, to have these two guys kind of meet up, and it's like that perfect union that it's like, wow, why couldn't we have got this, back when they were writing Welcome to Heartbreak and stuff.
Mhm.
Um, now I think there are, like you said, there's just some really special moments. Like I think the Louis Prima flip for Fourth Dimension is like classic Kanye production, and obviously Mike Dean was on that beat too. So I think that's probably my favorite song. I think
Mhm.
Ghost Town Part Two did not live up to the namesake the way the first Ghost Town put everyone on, but and then Reborn, which I'll talk about a little bit later,
Yeah.
um, gives Kanye's probably his best single verse in a very long time, several years. So I think, yeah, even though it's has some issues, and because it's a short record, 7 tracks, 20 something minutes, it's tough to make a total impression if you're not nailing every single thing. But I still think what we got is still really good. And, again, do you separate any thoughts about Kanye the guy right now? You listen to this, listen to him and Cudi, it's great chemistry. And I think it ultimately just sounds very good.
I totally agree. I hope Kanye's able to kind of rein it in a bit. He's been going these tweet storms recently, and he's saying that when he was dropping My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, like he was doing these tweet storms too, but it feels a little different. Um, and with everything surrounding him at this point, it's I want him to be able to find a way to like harness that and not have to be out there the way he is. But that's a conversation for a non-list day. Let's keep it moving. This was probably the hardest pick for me. Because I mean, I had probably about 20 to 25 albums that I was looking at for this list. And the thing that kept coming up was Boy Genius, Camp Cope, Phoebe Bridgers, Mitski, like all of these. Yeah, but mostly female alternative rock artists. It was a really strong category this year. But the one that stood out the most, and the interesting thing about it is the longevity of it, is Soccer Mommy. And this is an album we didn't talk about on the pod. But Soccer Mommy probably has the line of the year. I don't want to be your fucking dog, which that song is fantastic. And I wasn't turned on to this album when it first came out, but my girlfriend has XM radio in her car, and she listens to the alternative stations a lot. And so I heard Your Dog, and every time I would listen all the way through, I'd be like, that's a great song, I should check that out. And then I started to hear Cool, and then I started to hear Still Clean, and I was like, man, this girl's pretty good. Gotta check it out. And I finally got around to it about a month or two late, and this album from start to finish is fantastic. Sophie Allison, this is her third album, and she just kills it. Not only is it lyrically really introspective and deep and smart, but she creates these grooves and these bass lines and these moments throughout the album that just like bring up so many like emotions and feelings for you around different topics, kind of like in Skin, like there's a point in like the second chorus when everything kind of like swells together and it's just really beautiful. Or like a stripped down ballad like Wildflowers is just a really great way to end the album. So Clean, for an album that came out in March, still the longevity and the lasting of it is phenomenal. So definitely check Soccer Mommy out. She seems to be announcing herself with authority. I also didn't even mention Snail Mail, which didn't make my list, but another female alternative artist, which pretty fantastic album this year. So a lot to like. Definitely check out Soccer Mommy. I already talked about Kids See Ghosts, so why don't you jump to your number 6, Dave?
Yeah, my number 6 is Georgia Smith, Lost and Found, debut record. Thing is, my two favorite songs on that album are older, Blue Lights and Teenage Fantasy. It's a 2016 and 2017 song. So I would have picked one of them to be on the list if they were actually songs of the year. But regardless, her debut album, I think, kind of confirmed what a lot of people were suspecting, that she's probably like the most exciting female in R&B space since like when Rihanna first popped. Like you can just see the potential and the talent, and she already has strong songwriting as like a 20-year-old or however old she is. And I was just really impressed with it. And because it's alternative R&B, it's not more traditional, like say LMI or something. But again, it's almost like Tierra Whack, where I want to hear what's next from Georgia Smith so soon. But shout out Drake. This is one of like those finds that he should get a lot of credit for, because obviously he gave her Shine like 2 years ago now. So yeah, I was very happy with this. Came out back in June, and yeah, I think some of those big tracks from it stuck with me a long time. Where Did I Go, I think, is probably my favorite song. That was new and original to the album. But yeah, big fan.
Yeah, I really liked Lost and Found, the title track of that album. I thought that was just a phenomenal like song just to kind of put on and groove to, like drink coffee in the morning or something. It's really beautiful. She didn't make my list, but it's a worthy choice. Number 5 for me is Vince Staples' FM, a 22-minute album with 11 songs, but what they like 1 or 2 interludes have really only 9 songs. And it's based around this like FM radio concept.
Big Boys
and Vince just Yeah, Vince just fucking kills it, man. Like, we talked about Big Fish Theory and how excellent that album was, and still going back to it, like Bangkok is like I think one of the best songs of like the past 5 years for me. I don't know, I just
Bag
really
back, you mean?
fucking love this. Bad Backs, yeah, there you go, Bangkok. My brain is not functioning very well today. My brain don't work well, but kind of just to like bring it back to FM, he is so witty and he's able to create these songs that like suck you in. You're like, oh, this is a great song, and then you're like really tuned into the lyrics. Like Fun, probably the biggest song off it. You're really sucked in. You're like, oh, this is a groovy beat. Like I'm really into this. And then he's talking about like his homies getting killed in the street, and you're just like, oh shit, like this is classic Vince, where he's able to like suck you in and make it interesting, and you're really digging the vibe. And then you're like, oh, he's talking about some real shit and like some fucked up shit. Um, I'm guessing FM made your list, probably a little higher, right?
Yeah, FM's number 3 for me. And
Mm-hmm.
we reviewed it pretty recently, so we don't have to talk too much. But I would just add that I think this was almost unexpected level up from Vince because we already held him in such high esteem. But the
Mm-hmm.
fact that he can make such a well constructed concept album at this length, I think is incredibly impressive. And then if you separate the album construct, you can just listen to songs like Fun or Feels Like Summer,
Mm-hmm.
or even those interludes from Earl and Tyga are pretty good. It's I think you can jump in at any point and just really enjoy yourself. But great features. Kenny Beats, producer of the year, killed it again on this. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I love FM.
It's a great pick. Number three, it could have been number three on mine as well. What's next on your list?
Yeah, number 5 for me is Pusha T Daytona, the first of those Kanye produced records back in June, right? June?
If
Yeah,
you
June.
know, you know. I think
You
that
know,
actually came out late May 26th or something like that.
oh, right. Yes. Yes. And
Mhm.
yeah, like Pusha T, he doesn't. And again, we check the review out for more, but we know that Pusha T doesn't do everything you can do in rap, but the things he does really, really well. And
Yeah.
I kind of think about this thing about J Rock, where it's just like your idea of a great Pusha T album is Daytona. It doesn't outstay its welcome. It has incredibly mean, barky raps the way you
Mhm.
expect from Push, and it just fucking bangs. Like I think I will listen to Cocaine Metaphors still. Yes,
Yep.
sign me up for more when they're this good and they're this entertaining. So
Mhm.
yeah, I fucking Daytona. A lot's been said about that, but I was fucking love this album.
Yeah, it was number two on my list. Daytona, it's for being 7 tracks. I think I did not enjoy an album and want to just restart an album more than this one. Just because every song it sounded a little bit different, but it just had the same energy. And like you pretty much summed it up perfectly. Like, give me more raps about cocaine if it's gonna sound like this. I can't really look through the list and pick out one song I don't like that much. Maybe What Would Meek Do? Like, is like the one song I'm like, it's not that great,
I
but
would go with Santeria for me. We're like a lower
I love
point,
Santeria, man.
but
Like, I
yeah,
think that's a great track.
you're nitpicking. I think if you're trying to really
Exactly.
critique any one song. So, but again, you can jump into this album song by song or listen straight through. It's great either way, just like Vince.
Yeah. We both had in our top fives. I think that speaks to the strength of it for itself. Uh, Number four for you. What'd you have?
Number 4 for me is Mac Miller's Swimming. Um, Perhaps this would have been a little lower on the list if Mac hadn't passed away. How can I know?
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the time we talked about it where it was, you know, Mac continued to level up and evolve as an artist on this album, more jazz instrumentation, more neo soul influence. Obviously, we know how talented all his friends are. Internet has influence on here, right? See, work with Steve Lacy. Um, and I think Mac did a really good job about talking about a lot of his demons. Unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't help at the end of the day. But I think this is probably his most critically acclaimed album for good reason because I think it has the most to offer in that regard. Again, we had seen flashes of this on past projects, even Divine Feminine, the one right before it.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of had an idea that Mac was, already well beyond the early frat rap, but I think this really it kind of crystallized here on Swimming that like Mac had like a lot of ideas that we never really were gonna give him credit for, and I was very obviously very disappointed that we can't hear more. But I think Swimming is a pretty nice final record. You know, we talked a lot about posthumous albums recently from X and Little Peep, and those are unfinished, you know, half baked songs mostly, right? But I think Swimming, obviously, because he finished it while he was alive, but Swimming, I think, is a really nice final piece of work. So,
Mhm.
yeah, number 4 for me.
Yeah, it was jumping in and out of my list as I was like thinking of more records and kind of dissecting it. It probably would have ended up as like 11 or 12 on my list. But it's a really strong record. If you go back and listen to our review, I think the thing that we came away with was at the time we felt like the sky was the limit for Mac artistically, that he was just about to go on this run of like making these really solid albums that were, you know, showing his growth as an artist. And I think that just enhances the loss even more than it already is. So definitely an album we're listening to. And I'm, you know, if nothing else, I hope this also leads people back to his other albums, which have
Mhm.
been pretty good the last couple of years. Like you said, after that frat rap phase, he really grew. So definitely hope people check that out. Number 4 for me was Parquet Courts, Wide Awake.
I knew this would be
And
on there for you
oh
somewhere.
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I've probably talked about it multiple times on the pod. Um, this was the most exciting rock album for me this year, and I think what I liked most about it was it took this. I mean, they talked about a lot of stuff. I mean, Tom Brady. There's a Tom Brady metaphor in there somewhere. I
Mhm.
think in Total Football, right in the beginning, but this really focused on like protest and political uh protests and how people they want change around these things, but they packaged it in this way that was really creative, where I mean, even just the song Wide Awake, which we'll be talking I'll talk about a little bit later, they use congos, they use bongos, they have this awesome bass line. They grew so much as artists from their last couple of records. I mean, just like the bassist for Parquet Courts really shines on this album, and I think they really tried to infuse more dance and almost in like an LCD sound system way. They really tried to make this a more interesting and inventive album, and they really killed it. There's a stretch in the beginning, from like almost had to start a fight to probably the song Wide Awake. That is just a phenomenal stretch of songs. Freebird 2's in there, Normalization, just a really strong record. And if you like rock music and you're feeling a little bit dejected, rightfully so, about the state of it, turn to Parquet Courts, check them out, and see if you can dig them, because they give me a lot of optimism for the genre.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's probably my favorite rock record of the year as well, to be honest. I really liked it as well.
Above the Beths
Yes, I
for
liked it
you.
more than the Beths, yes. I like the Beths first like EP more than their album that came out this year. But
Gotcha.
do you have the Beths on your list?
Interesting. Well,
Are you hinting?
nah, they were one of the ones I had to leave off,
Right.
unfortunately.
It's tough.
Um, it's a tough list this year, man. A lot of great music. Um, Number 3 for you, Dave.
Number 3 for me is Vince, and
Okay.
number 1 for me is Anderson .Paak, so number 2 is probably on your list, so why don't you keep going?
All right. So 3 for me was Casey Musgraves. We reviewed this earlier in the year. I'd never thought I'd have a country record on my list, but Casey Musgraves just really blew me away with this, and I hadn't really been that tuned into her until this year. When we talked about our anticipated albums for the year, we talked about how she was supposed to drop an album, but neither one of us were very familiar.
Right.
So when we reviewed this and we both liked it, I was like, huh, there's something here. And I went back to many of the songs on this. Like Golden Hour is probably my favorite one from it. And it's just this very like watching the sunset type song. And it really just makes you like filled with like joy. But then she had like Happy Sad,
Space
Lonely
Cowboy.
Weekend. Yeah, Slow Burn, Space Cowboy, where she talked about loneliness and she talked about all these other things going on for her. And she tried out a lot of different hats on this to great success. I mean, probably the song everybody turns to off this is High Horse, which is like this disco country song, which I'm guessing will be on our list. Maybe I chose to leave it off, unfortunately, because I had only wanted to pick one song from this record, but almost every song on here I enjoy when I listen back through it. So if you haven't checked out Golden Hour, I highly recommend it, even if you're not into country music. Um, Number two was Pusha T, Daytona for me. So your number two, my number one, got to be Dirty Computer, right?
Oh yeah.
All right. Why are we giving Janelle so much praise here, dog?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned this before, the idea of, I think for Pusha, where you listen to a record and you just like want to restart it, you just want to like reset that vibe and dive back in. That's how I felt listening to Dirty Computer the first time. And it's interesting because I mean, it's what it's pop, it's R&B, it's soul, it's a lot of genres, but in a
Funk.
tasteful
Yeah.
way. But Janelle has always, on Electric Lady on Arch Android, she's the idea of like man and machine has been something she's explored and worked on for some time, right? In her
Mhm.
her their alter ego she's been building up. So it's definitely like a good sequel to her past work. But even
Mhm.
if you come into a blind without knowing the backstory of her career or anything, you can just immediately jump in and feel these songs that are both really fun and sound great. You can dance to a lot of this album, and you also can like really think and sit down and think about stuff too. Songs like Pink, for example, are both really fun and have really good moments, like when the bridge happens, but also have like good messages and like make you think if you want
Mhm.
to. And of course, the videos for this whole album are awesome. She's a big long one, and of course, smaller actual single videos. So I struggled picking this versus Anderson. I think part of my reason going with Oxstar number one is because I knew you would have Janelle one, so
Yeah.
I figured that we wouldn't copy. It's
Overlap on it.
kind of like last year where I had Kendrick, you had Lord, and we just flipped them for one and two.
Yep.
Same thought. But yeah, I think Dirty Computer is fantastic, and it's very well deserved for album of the year. Grammy nom, it fucking won't win, no chance. But I'm really glad that she got that recognition, because again, this is an album that
Yep.
didn't sell nearly as well, didn't stream nearly as well as we would have hoped, given how good it is and how critically lauded it was. But
Mhm.
nevertheless, it's going to endure. But why was it your number one?
I mean, Janelle Mo Queen. That's what I gotta say about it. I was just gonna say she's just a fucking queen, man. From the album art, to basically the first like 7 or 8 songs of this album, which I think are all really, really good. I mean, I guess it drops off when you get to a Pharrell Williams song, which I still think is very catchy and fun to
Mm,
listen to. Um, it's just crazy. It has this. I mean, the run from Screwed to Make Me Feel. That's the best 4 song run of the year. And I mean, if you want to just pick out 12 minutes off an album that you really can't skip through just because it's so infectious and so much fun to listen to.
mhm,
I can't really think of another album that really compares to it that way for this year. Um, and I mean, the thing is, I look up and down the playlist, like even the first song, like I remember first listening to Dirty Computer with Brian Wilson. I was like, this is really interesting. Like it's really pulling me in. Then it jumps into Crazy Classic Life, and it blends so perfectly into this like pop funk like goodness. And then she starts rapping at the end, and I'm like, oh shit, like Janelle's on another one right now. This whole album is fantastic, and you spoke to the themes of it. But Janelle Monae is she's a lightning bolt, man. I really hope I catch her this summer at a festival because not only is she a great she makes great songs, but she's a great performer on stage, and I'm really excited for her career. The only thing I have to say about it, like negative I have to say about it, is there were so many good songs, kind of like you did with Anderson. I left her off my best songs of the year list. I couldn't pick one of them.
mhm.
So, um, any honorable mentions you wanted to throw out there that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, I wanted to mention a few. I think if you're reading other lists, obviously there's plenty to pick from. There will be some common albums that you'll probably see that we didn't talk about. We mentioned Mitski before. I think the 1975's record is on
Yeah.
a lot of these lists. We just reviewed that extensively, so go check that out for our thoughts on that. I think Father John Misty, God's Favorite Customer, I think is like
Mhm.
almost went under the radar this year, but I actually really like that. Of course, Cardi B's Invasion of Privacy is on a lot of lists. Ariana
Yep.
Grande Sweetener is probably the best pure pop album of the year. Camila Cabello's Camilla, her debut album, I thought was really strong. One of the first big albums we got. And then personally, I wanted to shout out Charlie Puth's Voice Notes just because that album has like 5 fucking bops that I love, and I find him very interesting in the pop space as a male pop singer. And then lastly, shout out Astroworld from Travis Scott, shout out Iridescence from Brockhampton, and shout out Room 25 from No Name. But great year, tough to narrow it down to 10.
Yeah, it was tough. I mentioned a couple of the female alternative artists. I also want to shout out Arctic Monkeys, an album that's definitely grown on me. Tranquility Base Hotel Casino. After seeing it played live, I definitely appreciate the songs more. 21 Pilots had an album that surprised me, but I thought was still really good. Dirty Projectors with Lamplit also surprised me. I didn't think I was going to enjoy that album, but I came back to it quite a bit. Yeah, and you mentioned Iridescence. I thought that was an album that I expected to make your top 10 list in some way, but I appreciate your integrity in keeping it off, because I don't think it's a top 10, but it's like a top 20 album of the year.
Yeah, for sure.
For me. All right, let's jump into the...
I was going to say, did you have any records that you were like really disappointed in this year that you had high expectations for and they just did not meet those expectations? Because I had a few that came to mind for me.
Here, read through your list and I'll think about it.
Yeah, so I mean, I've talked about these a few. There's a few rap records that I wanted to be great and they just weren't. YG, A$AP Rocky, Migos, Ray Shremmerd. But also, I think bigger pop-wise, I think this is the first one of these to pop, or second one after Culture 2. Justin Timberlake, Man in the Woods.
Yeah.
Total flop. So definitely an album that aspired to be on all these lists, and he was hoping that we were talking about that album the way we just talked about Janelle Monáe in terms of various genres and lyrical themes, but it just was totally flat. So I don't know if you had any of those to come to mind, but those really stood out to me.
No, none that can come to mind, but fuck the 1975. That's all I have to say. Why don't we jump in? I honestly, I just didn't give a lot of thought to this. I could probably come up with some, but I just keep listening to all these like top 10 lists, and I had to listen to the 1975 so many times, listening to like podcasts and stuff. But
yeah,
I'm over them, dude. I'm over them. But I'm wondering, are they going to be on your best songs of 2018 list?
You'll have to find out.